All right, welcome back everybody to conversation number 102. We are rethinking marketing analytics in 2025, aligning insights, intent, and impact with Juliana Jackson. But before we start, as always, let's thank our sponsors. We'll start with Conductrix, who've been with us from the beginning. Thank you, Matt, Nate, Ezekiel, Ashley, and the entire team at Conductrix so much for supporting the TLC. We'd also like to thank our other TLC newsletter sponsors, starting with Conductrix. And Growth Book, thank you all so much for providing your thought leadership to the community. Thank you, Convert, for sponsoring the amazing Conversations channel and the conversations we have each month. Take a chance, answer a question, get to know each other. It's a really great way to get to know your fellow experimenters. And who knows, just by answering a question, you might win a prize. So go over to the Conversations, find out what we're talking about this month, and join the conversation. And last but far from least, thank you, Eddie Aguilar, Blazing Growth, for sponsoring the TLC community. Next up, before I introduce Juliana, a few announcements and reminders. Most exciting, Experimentation Island, EI 2026 ticket sales process, different this year. If you've ever been to Measure Camp, you know that they release tickets on release schedules. That's what we're going to be doing this year due to very limited availability on the island. We are switching to a rolling ticket sales process. The first release will be for people who attended last year and people who register for notifications. So if you see that big orange button when you go to experimentationisland.com and you click the button and you give us your email address before the first release, which is in mid-September, so just a few weeks, you will be eligible for the first round of tickets. The first round of tickets will be 4 hours long for the 4 time zones in the US, or until those first tickets are sold, which may not last 4 hours. So it will start at 1 p.m. Eastern until those tickets go. It's only 20% of all available tickets, which I think is like 30 tickets. So when those 30 tickets are gone, they're gone. Starting at 1 p.m. Eastern. I think it's September 15th, maybe September 16th. Depends on when we get everything all hooked up together. So go sign up for ticket sales updates. We'll notify you as soon as we have it all hooked up and ready to go. You don't want to miss out. It's going to be, for those who have been there, it's a pretty special event. Next, for those who have attended in the past, Ruben and I are moving the award-winning experimentation culture class to Maven. It starts, our first cohort starts October 6th. And you can go to that bit.ly AB culture Maven or scan the QR code to learn about it. We're pretty excited about moving over to Maven and seeing if we like that. We're experimenters. We're trying a new thing. We'll see if we like that. But what we're all here for. Okay. Be kind to Juliana. For those of you who didn't hear it earlier, she's wiped. She hosted final exams today. 30 people just got home a little over an hour ago. And for those of you who know her already, you know she's a firecracker full of piss and vinegar. And lots and lots of knowledge. But if you don't know, fair warning, the next 45 to 55 minutes will include clarity, hard truths, a shit ton of F-bombs, and a lot of knowledge. Juliana is my friend and my favorite badass in data. She knows customer lifetime value inside out. She can dismantle your data strategy in one sentence. She's forgotten more about data storytelling, AI, product, and data science than most people will ever learn. She makes the complicated obvious, the obvious urgent, and she does it without any filters. Expect some profanity. Expect brilliance. Expect to walk away smarter. Expect to walk away with lots of things to think about and want to learn more about. And please welcome my friend, the brilliant, the brave, the beautiful, the tell it like it is, Juliana Jackson.
I don't know what to do with myself. Thank you for the overly generous introduction. Yes, every time I think it's my second time, but I've also like joined a lot of times to hear to other people that are, doing this. I'm gonna try to share my screen with a prolong. So now I'm gonna share my screen. I hope. Let's see. Yeah, every time I come here, I'm always very, very impressed because Kelly, man, like all of you guys, I just love this community so much. So I'm extra stressed right now because I'm trying to share my screen and I can't. So let's see how that goes. I'm gonna do this again. But until then, I can tell you jokes if you want. Yeah, just kind of go and share. There it is. Yay. Okay. Um, yeah, so I'm very excited to talk about this. I think Kelly is right to warn you that some of you might get triggered, and it's fine. But I also I'm very calm right now, which is very unlike me. It's just probably because I'm tired. But yes, I'm Juliana Jackson. I've been in digital marketing for 15 years. I recently started to work for Jellyfish as a cloud director. I used to be at Monks until this Monday. So yeah, I write, I do a podcast, Standard Deviation, and I have a newsletter. So I want to start with what everybody that does keynote speeches starts like. Let's talk about how CRO is dead, how the customer journey is dead, the funnel is dead, everything is dead. I do agree that we do have an issue with how we're measuring customer journey and how we're understanding customer journey, because indeed it's becoming very, very hard to measure and to understand, because it's a mix of first party data, it's customer profiling. We have been telling each other for 15 years that we're doing personalization, and we are sending hello name emails, and yeah, or like, oh, other people bought this too. I think we should test this and implement this. We have to centrally orchestrate this data. Everything is in the cloud, everything is SQL and it's BigQuery and it's GCP. And we're hearing so many acronyms that, industry is trying to use them to scare us and, to push us to make decisions and whatnot. And of course, here it is, the ultimate goal of everything, personalization. Now, I do agree with the fact that the consumer expectations are pretty much different than how they used to be. And right now we have platforms that are fragmented. Customer journey doesn't happen just on the website or on the app. As much as we like to tell each other that that's the case, the customer journey can start anywhere. It can be triggered by anything. And culture is happening in the life, everything that's going on happens on social. And I do remember this thing. I was talking to Steve Rasmussen today with the fact that so many people are still investing in email and consider email the main communication channel, but is that really the thing anymore? And what it used to mean to earn brand trust and to be able to have power in the market has changed. Typical brand measurement models of looking at advertising, looking at paid, looking brand survey lists, and so on are not going to help you anymore because things are not happening linear in the market. And of course, the big elephant in the room, AI. And we tend to believe that AI will solve everything, doesn't it? So every interactions that a user has with the brand, every time we open our phone and we click on something, every time we watch a video, every time we think about something or say it out loud next to our phones on Instagram and we see it afterwards in our feeds, is producing a shitload of data. And we have a problem with data. We're obsessed with collecting data, but do we know exactly how much data? Well, every day an individual user spends 8 hours on their phone, have 6 hours maybe of digital time on screen time, and there's 5,000 new unique interactions with digital platforms. So if we think about, multiply this across 5.5 billion active internet users, that's a shitload of data that we're working with. And we tell ourselves, we are so data driven, we're collecting so much. Why is the customer journey? What is the customer expectation so hard to understand? Well, it's mostly because we're using data wrong. And the interesting thing is that we're still looking at last click quantitative data to define customer actions, to define customer journey, to define expectations. And at the same time, we're ignoring absolutely everything else. We're very much disconnected from where experience actually happens for most users. We still believe that GA4, we still believe that Adobe or any enter analytics tools are going to be able to tell us what is the experience, what are these people thinking about us, how do they feel? And we're not getting those answers there because that is not where the experience happens. And based on the uphill battle, based on the numbers, it's an uphill battle because this type of disconnected data and the way we're using data is costing companies a lot of money. So I was looking at this Qualtrics report. I really found it very interesting, and I'm happy to link it back to anyone who's interested. $4.7 trillion we spend on data. And if you look at every industry report, every post on LinkedIn, every blog article, we're talking so much about 82% of marketers have no confidence. Nobody has confidence in the data. Nobody understands it. And yet here we are producing it every day. And most people will say, hey, but don't we have AI? Shouldn't AI help us to do that? And the rush that most companies are experiencing right now, and there's a lot, I'm trying to stay positive and circle of positivity, but there's a lot of AI snake oil on the market, which is preying on people that have maybe not such a good understanding of artificial intelligence as it is, or maybe they are forced by the market or forced by their leaderships to make decisions. But the thing is that when we're rushing to implement these AI tools in our workflows without considering where do they fit, without considering how is affecting our business, without considering if we have the people capable in the team to use these tools, it's just making us have huge OpEx costs. It's increasing the complexity of our work. And I remember, I cannot paraphrase directly, but Matt was saying something that some time ago, that complexity is not necessarily how hard the task is, but also the people in your team on how capable they are to resolve something. I think I butchered that, Matt Gershaw, but it is what it is. And it's obviously creating a lot of, risks from a privacy perspective. And I wrote this article about the EU AI Act. So if you want to get even more depressed than I am, I invite you to read to read it. But there are currently a lot of regulations that are happening in Europe. I live in Europe, so in Europe right now there's the EU AI Act that has been in effect since February. On August, we just recently, implemented the measures that are happening with high-risk systems. So there's a huge, huge issue with privacy and with compliance and very, slow time to market. So while yes, we have all these industry reports about data, we're just people are not able to get value from it. People are not using it. We're rushing to implement AI tools without having any full understanding of how they fit in our workflows and whether if they're actually useful. So there is not a singular AI solution that fixes every data problem, especially if that problem is data analysis. And for that, I invite you to listen to the podcast I did on Analytics Power Hour with the amazing guys there. But AI can help you when your focus is to deliver more personalized and authentic customer experience. So I want to talk a bit about this because brands normally, when they're building experiences, they're very static, they're very outdated, they're very removed from the reality of how experience happens. And most of the times, the users that experience brands, they just don't feel necessarily special. They don't feel necessarily, important to their brand. So they're one of many. So in order to move from that to experiences that are relevant, that are fresh, that are interconnected, they're dynamic, they feel authentic to the user, you can follow this framework. So this framework, obviously, a lot of the case studies that I'm about to show you next are from my time in Monks and the amazing work that I did with the team there. So I want to make sure I give the credit. But I'm going to talk about this framework called Insights, Intent, and Impact. So it's basically, how do we measure this user experience in this new context that we are experiencing? How do you understand intent and how your brand is being perceived? And then how can you basically mix all this qualitative data that you get with first-party data to actually deliver these experiences? So trigger warning here for all the CROs in this call. Let's talk a bit about understanding the user experience beyond heuristic evaluations and funnel analysis. So for more than a decade in the CRO industry, we do kind of the same stuff. We're doing a heuristic evaluation, we're doing a funnel analysis and some user surveys if we're really, really lucky. And we have, as people would call it centers of excellence. I will not go in there. The thing is that heuristic evaluations do not account for real user behavior or contextual nuances. I'm not gonna say, because I know if Ryan is here, he's I'm expecting some comments, but I will say that maybe they're not completely useless. I'm trying to be generous, but they're not very helpful when it's looking just at specific pages, at specific journeys, and they're very, very subjective to the evaluator. And then, of course, funnel analysis, it doesn't account for how a customer journey happens. Sure. And I actually had this conversation with my class because I had a lot of guest speakers that really love funnel analysis, and I've been the antichrist of funnels for the last month. And I do understand the purpose of funnels. I think I'm not saying we shouldn't do them, but I think we should take a bit with a grain of salt. If we're looking at different ranges, if we're looking at awareness and consideration, we should be very careful using a funnel analysis and relying on website data. And then user surveys, of course, they don't account for different behavioral contradictions. You have to have enough data to be able to fully have conclusions that are, I guess, relevant to the whole population of your customers. So these are the things we kind of always do. And it's very hard to resolve 2025 problems, modern data problems, modern experience problems with methods that were invented a million years ago. Um, it's Some of them are good, some of them are very outdated, because back in the days, you would look at website experience or app experience as the holy truth of what people, how people discover you, how people find you, how people engage with you. Sure, they're still important, but do they tell the whole story? Absolutely not. So I stole this I stole this slide from Erin. You should definitely buy her book. Erin is amazing. So I stole this from her and actually put it 5 minutes before a talk in Copenhagen. These are methods of the past. So in order to be able to really understand the experience, you should look more at deeper cross-channel experiences, often unexpected data sources, to be able to understand what is the experience and what is the behavior besides the classic CRO book, code playbook. So for me, one of those places is unstructured data. And this is how I fell in love with artificial intelligence and data science. And I forced myself to stand for the statistics course, which I'm still shocked after so many tries that I was able to pass. Don't get me wrong, I still cannot talk about this, but I do understand to a degree. So unstructured data brings you context into what customers do, think, and feel. So unstructured data is basically data that you find in different formats. You can find it in text, lies in customer reviews, chat transcripts. You can find it in videos. You can find it in images. You can find it, in sentiment scores. This is a type of qualitative data. But the best way to explain it is it doesn't live in a table. It's not a tabular type of data. It lives in different formats. So this type of data, once you analyze it, and we will cover that too, you are able to transform it into a story, because connecting search queries, connecting social media content, connecting customer support chats, reviews, surveys, and so on at scale, you're able to transform this types of media formats into actual numbers, and you're capable of analyzing them. So I want to talk to you about Starbucks. This is a case study from my time at Monks. I was very fortunate and privileged to work on this client together with the team I had at Monks with Krasimir. So the challenge that I had with Starbucks, they wanted to understand how users are interacting with their app and the features that they were releasing, and whether that, all the investments that they were making in the app are actually driving loyalty or customer satisfaction. So we, at Monks, when I was there, we actually built their apps as well. We did the tracking, we did, the whole orchestration. So we only had obviously Firebase data. We had some sort of maybe heat mapping, some sort of feature flag data, but we couldn't use all of those things to actually tell a story and understand how people are actually engaging with this and whether they're satisfied. So I did this online type of webinar years ago with Millie KC. She used to be at Uber then, and with Mike Robbins, that's now at Snowplow. And it was in 2022. and ChatGPT was just coming out on the market. And we did this webinar where Millie was actually showing how you can use Google Natural Language Processing API to analyze IMDb reviews. And she showed that into the video and how she does it in Google Sheets, and she wrote an app script code. It was very, very cool. So when I looked at our app review, I realized like we have a very big volume of reviews here, and we have ratings. So we have a qualitative component, which is the text in the reviews, and we have a quantitative metric, which is the rating. Now, the interesting thing is when you work with app reviews and ratings, you will find situations when the text of the review is positive and is great, but then you see the star rating that doesn't match the review. So when we analyze this at scale, we realize that this occurred like 30% of the time. So you would have people that are very happy about the app and the experience with 1-star rating. And then you have people that are angry, are upset, and they give a 5-star review. So it was very hard to work with data like that. And especially there's companies that perhaps they use the app rating as a measure of success, as a North Star metric, especially if you're in a team that, I guess, looks at app growth. So what's interesting to know is that both Google and iOS have this weight algorithm that when they show the when they show the rating on the App Store, they put a very, very big weight on recency. So even if you, let's say, have a bad rating, if in the last 6 months your reviews were, inclined more to positive, then the store is going to give you a higher review because they want to convince new people to the app to actually install it. So that means that we were kind of working with wrong data. And this is something very interesting that we discovered, and we did this box plot visualization, and we noticed that it was a very, very big problem. So what we did is we actually did this customer voice analysis project, and we use natural language processing. So natural language is the language that we all speak. It's English, it's French, it's German, and so on. Natural language processing, it's a task under linguistics, and it's basically looking at the words in a sentence and tries to basically understand the context, try to understand the sentiment, if you're doing a bit of sentiment analysis as well. So we sectioned our project into 4 parts, which is understand, classify, predict, and activate. So in the understand part, for us, the most important part was what are people saying, what are the topics that they're talking about, and we did something called topic classification, where we basically used a BERT model, which was able basically to look at all the customer reviews and classify them on the more I guess common labels that would have been of interest. So the brand, actually Starbucks, had a very much interest into the login. They had a lot of interest into the forgot password, change password, and so on, the onboarding experience, and different features and components. So we use something called zero-shot classification. And that's a method where you tell the model in advance what are the specific labels that you're looking for into the text data, and the model is able to retrieve those. And also, because the ratings were how they were, we actually created the bespoke sentiment analysis scoring, where based on the volume of the reviews and the general sentiment that we discovered, we actually couldn't use only positive, negative, and neutral. We actually had very positive or very negative, because there was a very big nuance there that actually was supported by data to exist on its own. So we couldn't just use negative, positive, and neutral. And then, of course, we did a bit of survival analysis, we did a bit of predictive analysis, and then in the end, we are, like, okay, we have all this data, let's do something with it. So the first thing we learned was like, what are the issues across markets and across app versions? When we did this analysis, we also used data from Firebase, and we also were able to get some sort of data for geography and a bit of demographics from the console data that is available for App Store and Play Store. This was really, really interesting. So when we looked at the behavior and the reviews and the comments and the topics that came from the analysis, we noticed that the iOS and the Android user were very, very different. most people that use iOS are more focused on design and premium experience and so on. iOS users just want their shit to work. They just want convenience. I'm an Android user. I don't care about how my phone looks. I just want to take nice pictures and be able to see my fonts and be able to, conveniently use the app. iOS people were very upset for design things, for like buttons, like where is this? Why is the star so big? It was very interesting. So we did quite a lot of research here. We also did the sunburst visualization to actually look at the behavior on top of the qualitative part. I cannot share that, of course. And then once we had all these data points and we had these insights, we started writing problem statements and solutions. So I do use hypotheses, you know. I'm just more pragmatic because I worked with the product team. So I actually worked with user stories, problem statements, and solutions. And then we created this optimization roadmap. We obviously prioritize the things that have the high volume, the high impact on the users. And it was very interesting because of course you have things like seasonality when it comes to food and drink. You have things that Starbucks might do in the press that upsets people, and then you would get reviews. So we created this optimization roadmap, and we broke it down in sustainment experiments. And sustainment basically means things that are related to optimizing the bugs in the app, optimizing the core app experience, and then new feature development. We realized that focusing on the core app experience improvements was actually way more important to grow loyalty and customer satisfaction than building a new feature. So that was Starbucks, and it was a very, very good part of my life. And working with the Starbucks kind of opened my eyes to what is possible when you use natural language processing analysis. I will also say that most people will attempt to do what I did for Starbucks with a large language model. Now, I'm not gonna say that large language models are bad because they're not. The difference is that when we did this for Starbucks, as I mentioned, we used the BERT model. It's a small language model or a specialized language model, uses both names. So when you're using a specialized language model, you have full control over the data that you put into it. You can deploy this into your cloud. You can find libraries on Hugging Face or other places that have available libraries. And you can deploy this into your own cloud. And this is very, very privacy focused. So for us, privacy was the top of the list. When we looked for a solution, we never considered using a large language model for this. Should you use a large language model? I get this question a lot. That's why I'm bringing it up. I'm saying that the best use for a large language model is to do a proof of concept, is to do this quick analysis to see if your idea is good, to see if your idea is solid, if it has legs. The problem with large language models is the accuracy, precision, and recall part that is very, very important when you do any type of text analysis. Small language models also hallucinate, but it's much more easier to fine tune a machine learning algorithm than to try to pimp prompts into LLMs. And it's very important to know that you have to do precision and recall and confusion matrices at the end, because 9 out of 10 times your classification or sentiment will be wrong. And it's something I've seen across most of my projects. So if you have to use LLM, because it's an LLM, it's also like if your company pays for enterprise GPT or enterprise Google, and you have your legal and privacy team signing up on you to use this for analysis, then I guess you should recheck with them before you before you proceed. And if you attempt to do this with an LLM, please, 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 precision and recall and confusion matrices, because there's a lot of false positives that happen. So once I finished this project to Starbucks, I said, what other data sources can I use to come up with better hypotheses? What type of data sources can I use to find, different, clean, find clean ways of looking at data without having to focus too much on what type of data I'm giving and feeding to these models, what type of data points I can use, what type of other teams I can talk to. to create better hypotheses and better experiments and obviously do good for the business. And then my search got me into search. So in 2024, when I started working on this, brand discovery and product discovery became very, very complicated. And there's so many things that happen to how people search online and how they find information. And I'm sure all of you here are aware of AI overviews and AI mode and so many new things. And also the new algorithm that also I cannot answer to the chat right now, so I'll take it afterwards. Uh, the algorithm that Google uses for AI overviews is not a ranking algorithm like the previous one was. So that causes a lot of issues for brands to become available, to win search results. So I like to give this example all the time. Like if I was in the business right now to look for the best CRM for a small business, which answer would I click? Would I click the sponsor that? No. Should I click the stuff that vendors post, like top 20 best CRO tools and number, one is me, or number seven will surprise you. So obviously, what option would most likely be chosen by users is going to be this, because this result is, I mean, obviously, you never know, but this result seems genuine, seems helpful, seems created by people for people. And Reddit is actually eating so much of the search right now. Now, the interesting thing is that the perception of a company or a brand is just basically your ability to meet and influence users' expectation. There's so much you can do when you involve search into this. I found this data from Rand Fishkin. I will probably share some of the slides with you guys after the webinar if you're interested. But I found this data source that I found very, very interesting. I know it's a pie chart, so if Tim Wilson is here, I'm sorry. But it was looking at US share of Google searches. Look at how big generic searches are versus branded. That means that users are not perusing the internet searching for your brand. They have to be brand aware for that, of course. But what's more interesting is that almost 70% of all traffic on Google in the US is information. And only 1% is transactional, people that are ready to transact. Commercial means that you also want to transact, but you still need a bit more information. And navigational is mostly used by local searches or like, I guess, website navigation and so on. So informational would be how to fix a car battery. Commercial would be where can I buy a cheap car battery. Navigational is car batteries near me, and transactionals I want buy car battery. So that's basically how the intent works. So if 1% of all traffic and that comes from Google searches is transactional, then why are we trying to force people to purchase it the moment that they're on our website? Why are we not trying to educate these people? Why are we not trying to tell better stories and to be, I guess, more close to what people want from us versus trying to, I guess, bomb them with 3,000 pop-ups to spin the wheel? 10% on my newsletter. Sign up now. Sign up now. Sign up now for this very shitty experience you're about to have. I think one of the best lessons I've learned in the last 3-4 years is that you cannot make it on your own as CRO/data. You have to work with people from advertising. You have to work with people from SEO. You have to work with people from product. I think, I don't know if this is the right audience, but it is what it is. I think there is some sort of elitism that happens both in data and CRO that kind of like makes us feel like we're better than. And I think that's a very, very stuck mindset. It's not a growth mindset. I think the more you work with people that do the total opposite of you, you will get to reap better benefits than just living in your own bubble. So brands now compete in a world where the user journey is fragmented. As you can imagine, this is what I've been saying, and AI is really reshaping. And when I say AI, please, 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 I'm not talking about LLMs and ChatGPT. That's another fight that I have to fight. But AI is indeed changing how we find and consume information, because as you can see here, I go on how to choose acne prone skin moisturizer. I get my answer here. I'm going to click on this. And if I go into perplexity, I have all the answers here. I'm just going to click on this stuff, whatever says the best thing. So how can you compete into this? how do you appear in the search results when basically everything can be done in one click? People don't even need to get on your website. Again, no, I do not subscribe to the stuff that websites as we know it are dead. That also is circulating on this internet streets. I don't think websites as we know them are dead. I don't think anything is dead for that matter. But I want to show you some cool stats. I did a bit of research before I joined the call to, update a bit my deck, and I saw that AI discovery is up. And I was looking at search engine land, and basically the first 5 months of 2025, within the time frame as 2024, we see how basically the sessions are GPT, Perplexity, and Gemini. They grew quite a lot. The N here is 19 GA4 properties for Matt Gershaw. And LLMs are actually part of the user journey, and some, especially in SaaS, a lot of the traffic, over 1% of traffic is initiated by our results. And it's mostly by people that are actually bottom of the funnel based on their research. And I saw this was interesting to me because I wouldn't expect legal, finance, and insurance and health to make up for so much. But I think the reason, and I did see consistent data also for the state of AI report that I read from Sensor Tower. I think the problem here, and I think all of you noticed this when it was that big whole, fight on social media with ChatGPT chats being leaked. I think because we are anthropomorphizing the relationship we have with this AI assistants like ChatGPT, like Perplexity, like whatever they are. We are anthropomorphizing this relationship to a degree that we're going to get our finance information, our, insurance or healthcare informations because we believe that's a person. And sadly, there's, a lot of people that maybe need somebody to talk to, and that's totally okay to be able to get that from the services. But also the companies behind the services are the ones that are on purpose doing this for people, like this something called reinforcement learning algorithms, which basically is what causes these models to glaze and to convince people that they have feelings. And yeah, it's a very sad world we're living in. But going back to what we can do, people don't really search for brands anymore. They don't peruse the internet. They want answers, they want solutions, they want inspiration, they want to feel validated. What is your brand? Well, it's a sum of very, very important things. It's obviously also led by helpful people first content, and it's kind of like what they find will influence their emotions, their behaviors, and what, is their cognition, what are they thinking? That is basically the delta of a brand. How well is how well are emotions, behaviors, and thoughts combined when people search? So brand perception does not exist in a vacuum. It can be measured. And when I was talking about unstructured data, this is a very, very good use case where you can analyze different data points to detect and understand intent. And this will get you closer to understanding what is content market fit. And content market fit describes how well content, topics, formats, and styles matching interests, needs, and goals. And you're going to be like, Juliana, but why are you talking about content market fit? Well, I talk about this because I'm always asking myself, is the brand at hand owning the conversation on the internet about their products and services? Because most people come to a website or an app with a story in their minds that you as a company did not author. You did not author that story. That story was created from TikTok, from YouTube, from Reddit, and I am an avid Reddit user. So for instance, an example I can give you: every time I want to buy something or I want to pay for a service, I always go on Reddit and look for other people's experience and see what fits me. Then I do my Google search because I'm old. And the last place I will go is the company's website, because when you're on the company website, you can, position things as you want to. So content market fit, the reason why I talk about this is because it answers to the question, is your brand owning the conversation about your products and services? And I've got this, I had to add this slide here because people were stopping me like, why, Juliana, but content? Content is blog articles. So I don't know who in this industry decided that content means blog articles or social media posts. Content goes beyond that. Content basically is any media format, features of an app or a software or a website, the actual website or app, the design of the website and app, and the copy and the messaging. All of this means content. It's not just a blog article. I don't know who who started this. So due to this misunderstanding of what content is, brands lose ownership of this conversation about their products and services. And it's very interesting when you as a company, you have this identity on your website or in your app, and it's not helping users make any progress because we're too much focused on doing, I don't know, single checkout or a triple checkout or changing buttons or, I don't know, going from a simple navigation to a burger menu. So brands that focus on helpful people first content will be the ones that win this conversation. So helpful people content is something that Google uses for their algorithms. And there is quite a difference between generic content and helpful people first content, because primarily the generic content that you'll see on the websites, images, copy, meta descriptions, even the snippet appearances that you see on surface, primarily created to drive traffic and to manipulate these algorithms, and is focused on keywords, is focused on trends, on metrics, over what people really search for or what people really need. And when a measure becomes a target, it ceases to be a good measure for just focusing on increasing ranking or traffic or impressions. So this type of content may attract clicks, but fails to retain interest or build trust. And when I say this, I'm thinking, I don't know, if I write something on Google and I have a SERP, it's really gonna matter a lot. What's the title of that result? What's the title? What's the description? What's the meta description? What is the image? If I'm searching for something very specific, can I see the pricing? Can I see the location? It's also very shallow, very repetitive. Most snippet descriptions I've seen and titles are kind of like one size fits all, where like sometimes people don't spend time thinking about the title tags or how they're appearing in search. And so first, that's where the website journey, I guess, begins. It's when people search and they see your result. And it's such a big mismatch throughout all the clients that I work with. It's such a big mismatch into what is sold on that little snippet on a SERP versus what you get on the landing page. So this type of generic content is generally optimized for search engines without considering if it's relevant. Helpful people content is actually created to provide value and solve these user problems. It prioritizes intent, questions, and challenges. I like this. I always talk about this tool, which I'm probably going to show you soon. It's called Also Asked, where you can basically see what are all the PAA, so people also asked boxes that you see in a SERP. It's super helpful to know how people are searching for your brand and what are the types of word connections they use to discover your brand. Helpful people first content is unique, is well researched, and is tailored to specific audience needs, and it captures and maintains this attention. It builds loyalty, it builds trust, especially if your snippet and title tags and how you appear in a search result, how relevant are you to the search result, and how relevant your content on the page is. This helps so much with brand trust and loyalty. And it's aligned to the SEO strategy, but it's more focused on intent-driven delivery versus algorithm-driven delivery. So when I want to purchase something for the first time I think about something, it's not really gonna happen into G4. I'm probably, if I want to buy maybe something, I'm not gonna go instantly on my phone and search. It's very rare that I do that, especially the more expensive and personal and intimate the purchase is. It's gonna take some time from the first thought to actually start looking for something passively or actively. And I think anybody on this call that knows jobs to be done maybe is probably guessing where I'm going with this. But the interesting thing is that the moment you actually start researching for something, you have very high cognitive dissonance. And the people that have the psychology background, and I'm doing this for you guys here in the call. Cognitive dissonance is basically when you have feelings that contradict your self-image, where it's a very interesting concept that I think all of us know and use in CRO. But when you start researching for something, you're automatically in your head putting, stops to that. And one day, let's say I care about sustainability, but at the same time, as somebody that cares about sustainability, I'm gonna go on Temu or Shane and try to buy some cheap shit. or I'm going on websites that have, in general, fast fashion. So that's kind of, against my feelings. It's against who I am lying to myself that I am as a person. So when I have that high cognitive dissonance, and let's see if any of you relate, I start telling myself some stories. Yeah, I know Shane is like, fucked up, but maybe if I buy more from Shane, I'm gonna buy less from others and I'm saving the planet. Maybe they're not that bad. Maybe actually it's good. Maybe the company is doing something. I start creating stories because this is self-regulation. I self-regulate. I don't like to feel uncomfortable. I don't like to have cognitive dissonance. So I'm gonna start to self-regulate. The problem is I'm not the person who's supposed to do that. If this is a website experience or an app experience, if I come from an ad and I come on the website, the UX, the design, the social proof, the messaging, the offer, all of this stuff, all this content, you as a company need to tell me the stories to regulate how I feel. It's not me. Because the more effort I put into self-regulation, the highest is the likelihood that I'm not gonna buy. Or if I buy, I might regret, or I might return, or I might cancel the order. So a company is the person in charge of telling the stories that help me regulate and be, sounded bad, but it is what it is, with how dissonant I feel in that moment. And this happens across customer journeys. So if I want to show you another use case from Monks, parts of it, I worked with a finance company, finance app. So let's say I start looking for how to open a bank account. This is very deep. This is very private. This is money. This is my life. This is my salary. So when I moved to Sweden, I was genuinely looking, what company should I start the bank account with? Who should I go with? Well, it's a lot of stuff that goes behind, the keywords that you write or like the search query that you write. So I'm using this tool that I mentioned called alsoask.com. It's a very, very good tool. You can use it for free for 2 tries. But even if you look at this slide, you see that behind open a bank account, these are what people generally ask in combination. But and you can see there's a lot of emotional things that are behind this. And when it comes to money, it's always emotional. And you should read Talia's book for that. But if let's take an example, like what bank has the current highest savings interest rate? What banks give you money for opening account in UK? Is Monzo good for saving? Which bank is the best for saving? People have emotions. People are looking for a solution. So if I go on the website that tells me just install my app, bro, you're good. We're the number one on G2, where I don't know what's now popular. We have all the signals of trust that we A/B tested, and we had the 5% conversion rate. This is not helping people make decisions because there's one thing, which is search intent, which is the user intention behind search queries, but there's other thing called page intent. And the page intent is basically what is a specific page designed to accomplish. A landing page should have you convert, right? But at the same time, how are you converting somebody? How are you telling the story that happens from a search, that happens from a TikTok? You have to optimize that page to answer to what people are searching for, not to push your product or your service at all costs. The more your page is disconnected from what people search for, the less likely it is that you will convert that person. And it's tools like this that we are being told by the industry that are going to help us connect the dots. Sure, but not to a degree that we can. Yes, you can do intent analysis with SEMrush. I tried it. It's out of the box NLP, sentiment analysis, and it's not adapted to your business model. It's just, very basic. If it's -0, it's negative. If it's 0, it's neutral. And if it's more than 0, it's positive. And a lot of times when I compare the results from SEMrush to what we were doing using a language model, not a large language model, was that the sentiment was wrong. So what I recommend here to do, you should export your search queries from the Search Console into BigQuery using a service account, and then you can use a library of a language model to actually do topic classification to understand what are the main topics, what is the volume, what is the click-through rate. And then from a CRO perspective, if you see that some pages have a low CTR, you have to go first to look at the SERPs. Go do the search that you see in your data and look at the SERP experience. Look at what is your title tag, what is your description, and then compare it to what they find on the landing page. This is very, very important. A lot of people skip this in their audits. So we did use natural language processing here. And once we analyzed the search queries for this brand, we found like this main categories of searches. And then what we did was we're looking at the monthly query volume, and then we did some predictive, and by we, I mean Prasimir, did some predictive analytics to understand what is the potential of acquiring new visitors on this topics. So an interesting thing here that me and Krasimir discovered is something called similarity. I want to cover this very quick. So for this use case, as you can see here, very big difference. And when I say impressions, is basically when you search on Google or in your search engine and you have people see your result on screen and scroll to them. But page views here, this is the analytics data. So as you can see, it's a very, 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 very different, different story from the search to the website. Informational intent was, 35 million. But then when you go on the website, you see that it's very, very low. This we couldn't measure properly from a data perspective. So what we did is we came up with this function of similarity. It's basically a function that looks at the search query text and at the web page metadata. And that means title tags, means URLs, means meta description, headers, and everything else. So basically what we were doing is we were calculating the similarity by doing this function and looking at how much the search query is found through the page content to the website content, but also how do they appear in the SERP, the title tag, the meta description, and every element. This helped us understand better to what extent this happens. Because if you look at this data, sure, it's cute, but it doesn't really help and tell you a story. So this was very, very interesting for us to do. And it definitely helped us look at scale of how we're performing. Because sure, I always advise people to do manual SERP analysis, where actually you just write the query in your search and you look at how you're appearing. And also be very, very careful, because if your brand sells in the UK and you're searching in the US, the SERP is going to be different. So use a VPN and look at the markets that are of interest for your client, because it's a very, very important thing. You're going to miss out on local searches. You're going to miss on local boxes and a lot of stuff that happens on a SERP. And the interesting thing is that if you see at the top of the SERP, there is mostly videos and blog articles and AI overviews, and then you have Reddit, but only after you start seeing the brand results, that it means that Google is actually rewarding educational content on that page. So if your title tag and your description and your details that you're having in SERP doesn't fit on how Google rewards that page, then you're going to have obviously issues with getting CTRs from those impressions. So it does help with return of investment if you think of things a bit more complex than normal. So yes, we're going to measure content market fit because we want to create content that resonates, that leads to better engagement. And this content will drive the transactional behavior, because if people find what they need and you're truthful and you have integrity in how you're presenting yourself, people will have trust and they will convert. Obviously, you can tailor the content based on the searches. You build brand loyalty because you have integrity and you're showing people helpful content. And obviously, this drives customer lifetime value and retention and will lower your costs, especially for paid. This is also good for paid. It can help you a lot with creatives and campaigns and so on. It's not just, it doesn't stop just at CRO. So I wrote, if you guys want to see how I would do this step by step, I wrote an article. It's on my newsletter. I took a similar case like the one here, and I'm going step by step through each of the steps. And I also share how you can do the intent analysis in Google Sheets with a bit of bad regex from my end. Now, to wrap all of this together, this qualitative data is good, but it's not enough. You need to work with your first party data to deliver these experiences. On Starbucks, we use this voice of customer data and we blend it with behavioral data because we wanted to deliver better campaigns, better, in-app experiences, better notifications, and so on. I cannot obviously share everything, but what I can share is that if you understand what are the issues, the blockers, the friction, and why do things happen, it's easier to come up with better hypotheses and better experiments. You're going outside of the bubble a bit, and you're looking at things that are helping you understand how these experiences are built and how people go through them. Now, the way you do is you take these blended insights and you enrich your understanding of the customer journey. Going back to my first slide, all keynote speakers are saying customer journey is dead, CRO is dead, everything is dead. I had that joke last year when I was doing conferences, and I had a picture of me and Tan Wesseling, who is the antichrist of CRO. The first party data is great, but you need to blend it a bit to understand previous purchases and experience, add fatigue maybe from overexposure if you're doing PPC. You can put nice personalized onboarding experience because you saw a social media comment. It's so much that you can do. And the framework that I've been using throughout my time at Monks really, really created this feedback loop of very, very authentic experiences because I just like to say that it's done with integrity and with respect to the client's data, to their client's data. And it's just done with integrity because we help these companies do better marketing and write better value propositions that were true to what users need versus necessarily the company journey, which is build, sell, and profit. So TLDR, experience and perception is just behavioral, revenue, and performance data that leads to better digital experiences. And I want to say that there is no spoon. I think we're living in a very incredible time right now where you can use so many types of models and they're all available on Hugging Face. You can use Claude to teach yourself Python like I did, take some courses. There's a machine learning crash course that Google offers for free. There's so many good content that you can use to expand your knowledge and understanding of artificial intelligence. And don't think, please, that artificial intelligence is just large language model. There's so much out there, and there's people that have been doing it for ages. AI is 50 years old almost. This is not new. And some of you are already doing multi-arm bandits and, predictive analytics, predictive COV. That's still artificial intelligence. It's just the machine learning part of it, the ML part of it. And that's it. Thank you. And I don't even know. I haven't seen nobody. I actually hid everybody on screen. I didn't see your reactions, which I think is good.
You did amazing, of course,
Stop
and
it.
as fully expected, right up to the end of the hour. Anybody who needs to drop, please drop. I don't want to keep folks, but at the same time, Juliana, if you have a minute, there is, Alex had 2 questions that I would love if you've got a second to answer them. And anybody else that needs to go, feel free. But
I can take Alex's question. Yes, so this is what we did with the first party data. Obviously, I cannot share, but basically it was re-engagement campaigns. It was in-app experiences and notifications and campaigns that we did using the client ID and user ID. It's just I can't show that in
for the
detail.
recording's sake, let's read out the question. Were there
Oh,
initial hypotheses guiding
I
your
know.
initial
Yes. So
policy?
I started talking about how you can. I know questions may not get answered, but parking thought here were the initial hypothesis guiding the project from initial problem statement. What's the linkage within recent app investments to customer loyalty and satisfaction? So that's what I said in the end. That's where I wrap it up. Is for Starbucks, we combine this data from voice of the customer analysis with actual first party data and behavioral data from the apps. And we were able to do better in-app campaigns, better, I guess, from what I can say, email strategy, better notifications, better ways of kind of converting those people and helping them, build their, get their first card or scan their first order. So it was a mix of things, but we had enough behavioral data from the apps across 30 markets, but we didn't have the context of how people are actually experiencing it and what were the main problems because yeah, it was very limiting for us. And that's how we were able to answer to it. But that's a good shout. I should probably put that slide back.
Awesome. Last thing that I will say for anybody in the London area, the next thing for the TLC is a live event, October 1st, Problem First Experimentation Evening with John Lewis and Partners, powered by Creative CX. That's at the Creative CX offices. RSVP is required. You can learn more about it by going to the Test and Learn community website at testandlearn.community. You can click RSVP required on that, or you can go to the events tab and click to RSVP. That is an event, again, at the Creative CX offices. There are very limited seats. I think we have room for like 40 people, and we're almost halfway there. So there's some seats left. But we will be looking at a problem statement of John Lewis and Partners, and they'll be sharing this problem that they're trying to work through, and then we're going to help them come up with some solutions combining UX research and experimentation. So it's pretty cool. There's of course food and drinks and all that jazz. October 1st from 6 to 8:30 p.m. in London. After that, Namrata is coming on, what date is that? November 14th. Actually, I think we have some more folks coming in October, but I don't have those on the schedule yet. But November 14th, Namrata is coming to talk about ethical experimentation, really important topic. So really jazzed to have her there, first time speaker, and ethical experimentation is a really important topic. So thank you, Juliana. I think there's more
I'll
conversation
try to
happening
answer.
in the
Yeah,
TLC
for
Slack. So
everybody. Yep. Thank you
love
so
your
much for
talk.
having me.
Any slides you're willing to share, if you'll pop those in the TLC calls channel as well. And the recording will be in about 30-45 minutes. I'll share that on the TLC. Thank you
Thank,
all.
thank you. And I agree with Matt. There's not enough love in the community for confusion matrices. I agree. Bye. Thank you.